Hi, everyone. I wasn't going to come on and do a video here today because I'm still preparing with the Holy Spirit my next video. But you see, when you have the Holy Spirit inside of you, not a fly can go past your nose without knowing his name. Okay? I was just watching a video that Rabbi Tovia Singer put out. He said that he debunked the tomb story and said that it was fabricated, that it's a total lie, and that based on how the women went into the tomb 3 days after the body had already been in there to dress the wounds and clean the wounds and put the salve on there and whatever, he said that the stench would be so horrific that he said that some of these herbs and perfumes, like myrrh and all of that, they have certain spices that when they blend them together, that they can mask the smell of a decaying body. And he went on to describe how utterly ridiculous it would be to do that to a decaying body. 3 days, how the decaying process accelerates very fast as soon as the spirit leaves the body. And because somebody had called in and asked this question, that the woman would have defiled themselves by touching a dead carcass, okay, in the Levitical law. And they were Jews. So, listening to this story, it didn't even offend me that he would say such a statement about the tomb. But what it did reveal to me through the power of the Holy Spirit was that if this is totally known by the Jewish community, that they fabricated this story, or whoever put it together fabricated this story, then why are the Jews capitalizing on the tourism, capitalizing on the ignorance of the Christian and the Catholics and the Protestants and the Lutherans and all the people that believe in the resurrection? Why would they capitalize and have tours to the Holy Land to go and visit the site of a story that they know is a total lie? This exposes Rabbi Tovia Singer as a fraud, a liar, and a thief, and also condemns the Jewish community in Israel who are running these tours. So I'm going to upload this video, and I want you to see for yourself what this liar has exposed about himself and about the Jews in Israel. Shalom.
Okay, all right, Rabbi, we've got this call. Let's take this.
Hi, William. I have a question for the rabbi. Why would two Marys go to the tomb of Jesus with spices after the Sabbath? Was this custom that women could touch a dead body, since this would make them unclean? Thank you.
All right, here we go. Rabbi, take it away.
That is such an important question. Why did the women go to the tomb to bring spices to anoint the body on Sunday morning? So as it turns out, this is a question that no one asks. I've never heard it. It always seems to me to be the elephant in the room because it demonstrates that the story of the empty tomb never happened. And you're going, what? And I need to explain this. We are told in the Gospels, not all the Gospels, we're told, let's just take Mark as an example, the last verse of Mark 15, the first verse of Mark 16, that after the Sabbath, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, Salome, they brought spices to anoint Jesus' body. That was the reason why They went to the tomb Sunday morning. In Luke, we find a very similar story at the end of Luke chapter 23, verse 56. They went home to prepare the spices and perfumes, and then the women rested on the Sabbath in obedience because they kept the law of the Sabbath. You don't prepare spices during Shabbos. And very importantly, on the first day of the week, that means now we're going to Luke 24, verse 1, what do? The women took the spices they prepared and they went to the tomb. So we have these stories where the body of the crucified Jesus is buried before the Shabbos, and women come to the tomb Sunday morning because we forgot to anoint with the spices. So we have to put the spices on the dead corpse. Listen very carefully. First of all, if you're a Christian and you're easily offended, you should turn off the show and watch something else. I don't mean to offend, but this is a point that everyone overlooks. This story never happened. It's complete nonsense. And ask yourself this question. Did anyone that you know of in your life, in history, ever go to a tomb 3 days later because some anointment had to be placed on a now rotting corpse? It never happens. Let me provide the background, because the idea of having spices with the person who passed away is all over Jewish tradition, and it's important to explain. The moment the person dies, the body immediately is decomposing, immediately. And as you can figure out, the body that is decomposing, it won't take very long for the body to give off an unpleasant odor, which is considered a bizoyan hames. It's considered a disgrace to the dead person. Do you understand this? It means, imagine you're in Yerushalayim. It could be a hot day. It could be 90 degrees. And the body is now giving off an odor that is unpleasant. The point is, the body is decomposing. So they had techniques, and this is described in our literature, that when washing the body, they would sometimes add spices to that washing process. It's called a tahira. They would have spices in the shroud or around the shroud. There was a specific combination of spices that were so strong that would completely mask the smell of the decaying body. The point is that until you get inside the tomb, it could be hours and hours. So therefore, in short, the spices are added so that during the funeral procession, so that during the burial procession, no one smells the odor of the decaying body. That's the whole point of it. Once the body is buried, and I think you know where this is all going, nobody digs up a dead body, or in this case, if it's buried in a mausoleum or buried in a cave, no one uncovers the cave 3 days later to put spices inside. This is all complete nonsense. No one ever does, because there's no reasons to do it. The whole point of adding spices, it's not like you have to have spices. If there's no spices with the body, then the body doesn't go to heaven. Has nothing to do with this. No mystery to all this. Therefore, the story that we find in the very first verse of Mark chapter 16, in Luke in chapter 24, verse 1, that never happened. That's all nonsense. There was no reason to go to a tomb after someone's been in it for 3 days. What are you trying to do? You're trying to make sure who can't smell the body. So how the heck did this ever wind up in a couple of books of the Gospels? The reason is they needed a plot device. They needed a plot device in order to explain how someone would come up with an empty tomb. There was no empty tomb, but what happened is they needed an empty tomb story because they need to say that Jesus rose from the dead. This is very important to the book of Mark in particular. Why? Because Mark ends 8 verses later. Mark ends in chapter 16, verse 8. Forget about what the other 12 verses that you see at the end of the Christian Bibles you have. Those last verses from verse 9 of chapter 16 all the way through verse 20, those were a later addition. It ends with the women were afraid and said nothing to anyone. That is the plot device. The plot device is, how do we get back the women to the tomb so we can have an empty tomb story? Think for a moment. Why would anybody go, you know what, the body's already in the ground, or it's in the tomb, it's been in there 3 days, it's decaying much, much further, but we have to put spices on it, even though no one's coming near it. Why would you want to mask the smell of a decaying body that it is already in its place of burial? Why? So what? The cockroaches don't smell it? What? It doesn't make sense. It's completely ludicrous. And that's the reason why John, as he does often, is he corrects errors in the Synoptic Gospels. And John introduces us to a character that was unknown in all the Synoptic Gospels, unknown in the letters of Paul, and that's Nicodemus. Nicodemus is important for Jesus' conversation, chapter 3, not going there now. He changes it to have Nicodemus take care of everything, the spices and so on, before the burial. Now, I don't want to waste time talking about there's a contradiction, because why would the women have to add spices after Nicodemus did it already? What happens is the author of John is simply correcting this. So the story was invented in order to have an empty tomb story, because then you have a motive for why the women go back. And you see that, in fact, in John chapter 19, at the end of 19, we have our Nicodemus character, an unto then unknown personality, who takes care of the spices and does all these things and makes sure that Jesus is buried properly. The empty tomb, my friends, never happened. Anyways, thank you for your question.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא